Oh dear. Welcome. These instructions are only for our Zoom guests. Don't worry about them. At the very end, after we've completed question answers, I'll have a QR code and a link for you to complete the survey. Our Zoom attendance.
Why are there so many people here?
This was well publicized to the
Thank you.
Christine
So
Hamlin.
exciting.
I didn't realize we were going to get live piano.
I know, and look at who's on Zoom. 300 people.
Really?
Yeah, this is like our biggest screen ever.
Just might be.
Hi,
I
I'm
mean,
Adam. Nice
seriously,
to meet
yes,
you.
sorry, Dr. Cassanello, this is Adam. She's the one who made all this happen.
Yeah.
With a lot of.
Is there a lot of extra credit floating around here? So
I think there's some. Yep.
And tell him again, it's 1,200 speech communication students were notified.
Come 1,000 students, all, I don't know, there's so many, there's about 1,200 of them, all of the intro to public speaking classes, so.
These are it's a required gen ed course that the communication school provides to the university. They teach, how many sections of it do you teach?
Basic public speaking, we probably teach about 20 a semester, and the Common 1,000 probably 4 or 5.
And I probably sent this out yesterday, but you're going to moderate the questions.
Yep, I figure we'll just go one online, one in person, and if because you'll have a mic and the students may not, if you could just repeat or paraphrase the question before you answer it, that'd be great.
All right.
Yeah,
Perfect.
and Adam's doing this.
Okay. And
What do you want us to do before? Do you need us to do anything?
Don't really have to do anything. I'm going to admit you before, but they'll do the full introduction at the end. We'll let you have to,
Okay, so then we basically just come to the Q&A.
if you'd like to. Go back. Or
is this a Zoom room?
we
So
are.
like if we're speaking, the microphone's out here.
I already checked the microphones. Yep. So if you're in the microphone, they can hear you.
He has done all of it. It's amazing.
Sorry,
You
we're
wanna
just.
come up to
No, I
We've
understand.
had so many.
Yeah, we
problems.
usually
Yeah.
have to like do everything ourselves, so.
I'm just so
Thank you
glad
so
you're here.
much.
I'm a big fan of the film. I'm so
Oh,
glad to watch
and
it.
I am almost done with the whole GTA thing too, which I will share with
I'm
you.
very
making a
excited to
lot
see
of
that.
progress on that.
Cool. That's just for Zoom. Yep. We've got a plan for everybody here too, but that'll be after we're all done. Yes, yes. Hi, Hi. Hi. Hi, everybody. Oh. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Zoomers, could I get just a quick thumbs up if you can hear me? Okay, good. We're set, thank you. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Adam Parrish. I am a lecturer in the Nicholson School of Communication Media, and I'll be your host / moderator for today. Welcome to the third and final event of UCF's first ever celebration of Free Speech Week. Every third week in October, also known as Free Speech Week, schools all across the nation come together to raise awareness of the freedom of speech and the press and its indispensable part in democracy. So today, the Nicholson School of Communication and Media Film Program is proud to screen the award-winning documentary, The Committee. After we watch the film, we'll have a chance to talk to the co-directors, Dr. Lisa Mills and Dr. Robert Cassanello. And as we get set up here, it's a good time to check and make sure all of our electronic devices are silent. Zoomers, I'm going to turn off the chat during the film, but I'll turn it back on afterwards. We had some trouble with the closed captioning. We requested PBS fix it. They were unable to do so beforehand. We apologize for that. No. And in-person attendees, I'm going to leave the chat on for just 30 seconds to see if there's any issues. Actually, I need to turn this back on. To see if there's any issues with audio or visuals. After we're sure that it's not, I will turn off the chat because it might be distracting.
The following program is brought to you by the University of Central Florida College of Arts and Humanities, the Office of the President, the Office of Undergraduate Research, by Kroll, a division of Duff and Phelps, and by Susan L. Gallagher. A complete list of funders is available at aptonline.org and thecommitteedocumentary.org.
They were calling students as well as faculty and staff and harassing them.
They questioned me for 15, 16, 17 hours. I was there all night till the next day.
I was terrified when they called me in. I just didn't know what to expect. I denied everything, and that was the end of it.
So I was afraid of everything. Who I talked to, what happened. So I ended up not going to classes. I thought everybody was watching.
This sort of began to sort of merge very well into this whole notion in another political discourse about communism. The idea that there was this hidden communist conspiracy in the United States. And so it's very easy then to see, sort of like homosexuality with communists and homosexual with communists. They're being sort of subversive elements hidden in American society.
There was no evidence to connect homosexuality and communism, but in the Cold War climate, that is what people did, and it sold to people, and it was used to push a certain kind of political agenda. And these were not unusual in the Cold War. They were not unusual after the Brown decisions. A lot of states were forming these kinds of committees.
Charlie Johns, he became focused on the question of whether within the state university system there were communists and homosexuals. He would call people to testify and ask very difficult and frequently inappropriate comparison questions.
The Johns Committee was formed in 1956. Its full title was the Florida Legislative Investigation Committee, and it formed in response to the Brown v. Board of Education Supreme Court decisions in 54 and 55. And their initial target was the civil rights activists, the NAACP, who were pushing for desegregation in Florida.
So in a public hearing, members of the NAACP were asked if they knew of any communists or if there were any communists in their organization, because the committee was trying to discredit the NAACP by making them appear communist influence.
My understanding, and this is purely hearsay, that this organization is attempting to organize on the University of Florida campus. And the Un-American Activities Committee has said there's a number of known communists that belong to this organization.
Well, the NAACP was very organized. They had a great organizational structure, and they were able to mire the committee down in court cases from 57 and 1958.
So the committee realized that they were going to have to shift their focus and find easier targets. Otherwise, they were not going to be renewed or refunded by the legislature. Gays and lesbians, of course, would not have a national organization behind them like the NAACP.
This is paralleling something else going on in the national climate. The 1950s were probably the most intense time of oppression for gay and lesbian people in the United States. And a number of local areas started to run raids and sting operations and so forth to entrap citizens.
There was certain restrooms that were popular, if you will. And then you have to go in there and catch them doing the act. I guess it was all very unpleasant. Yeah, I interviewed a lot of people. What were you doing in that restroom? Why were you in there? So-and-so told us that they had a homosexual relationship with you. Is that true? Yes, no, that sort of thing.
When they began to arrest people, they found that they were arresting teachers. And they discovered that a number of the teachers had gone to the University of Florida.
Archie Strickland was the chief investigator for the Johnson Committee. He was in the Tallahassee Police Department and had worked investigating the Tallahassee bus boycott.
One of the tactics that Strickland pretty much always used was to start trying to get information from people, and usually they would hesitate in various kinds of ways.
He could be pretty ruthless. He would interrogate people late at night, all that kind of stuff. He would lie to people and say that, they had been named by someone else when they actually hadn't. They also didn't mind interrogating students in motel rooms and pressured them to give information about other students that might be gay or lesbian, or about professors who might be gay or lesbian.
The Tallahassee Police Department is using Florida State University students as informers against homosexuals. The students get $10 a head every time one is approached by a suspected sex offender. Police Chief Frank Stoudemire feels that the students want to work as informers. It's all right with him. John Hayes, Channel 4 News, Tallahassee.
It's very interesting when you look back. Everyone talks about a coming out story, and I said I never was in, so I couldn't come out.
I had little girlfriends from the time I was an adolescent, but you kind of had to play the game, and even in high school, you knew that. So you had to have a boyfriend.
It was not a decision, it was just something that I never felt any other way. It's like, to me, it's completely natural. I mean, the idea of gay rights wasn't even on the radar back then. They were unthinkable back in 1960. Early on, I was just focused on being a student and trying to get through the challenges of being at a large university by myself. It was a challenge just to focus on my studies. I was on the swimming team. I swam for the University of Florida. I was always interested in photography too.
I wanted to be a band director. My band director and his wife suggested FSU. I loved FSU until my sophomore year when all the stuff happened to me then. I was by that time, of course, in marching chiefs and really having a great time. I was just being a student, active in music, played intramural sports. I think that's where they found me. Because a lot of the girls that played intramurals were lesbians. So I think that's why I was targeted. They took me into the basement of the administration building and to a room, and I was there for at least 15 hours. I think it was probably closer to 17 because it was the next day. During that time, I was not offered the opportunity to go to the bathroom, to have anything to eat, or to have anything to drink. All they wanted to know were the names of people. Did you have relationships with other women on the campus? What about this? These people? I said, oh, no. Did you see anybody doing this or that? They would be pretty graphic in what they said. It was almost like there was a very deliberate attempt to keep me longer and longer and longer, so I'd be more and more tired. And I just kept saying no because I hadn't. If I had, it would have been different. I don't know how I would have reacted because then it would have been a matter of honesty.
I will never forget that day. I was sitting in my dormitory room on a Tuesday around 2:00 in the afternoon, and there was a knock on the door, and it was John Tileston. He was an investigator for the University Police Department. And he knocked on my door and said, would you come with me, or not, would you come with me to the University Police Department? And that was the first I knew about it. They brought me into a room and said, we have information that you're homosexual. And I said, you do? I said, where did you get that from? And he declined to tell me where that information came from. I said that, I don't know where you got this information from, but it's not correct. They showed me a letter from the president asking me that they can help me with my problem, so to speak. And I was shocked by that as well, that the university president involved in this witch hunt. Well, had I admitted to it, I would have been kicked out of the University of Florida.
So I was afraid of everything. Who I talked to, what happened. So I ended up not going to classes, took incompletes, and didn't go back. And so I ended up with academic probation. I knew what was on the record. They said, you're a lesbian, you can't be a lesbian and come to a state college. I cannot help but imagine that many people, including many of the people who already had their careers, professors, staff people at the university, their lives were ruined.
The irony today is that the student union is named after J. Wayne Rice. I would say he was part and parcel of that Johns committee. The irony is that the student union is named after a homophobe.
Well, my name is John Stanton Tileston Sr. started with the University Police Department in April of '56. None of us carried guns in those days at University Police Department. We were just friendly officers. Give me a kiss. Get flies. The Johns Committee wanted me to work with them about finding all the queers and the communists on campus. Oh, that's kind of silly. I'll do that. That's what they want me to do. Criminals, it didn't bother me. People in this situation, it bothered me. It was pointed out to me that if you took them out of their classroom, it was the benefit of the shock. You know, I felt sorry for people that happened to. For the most part, these people were rather young, really frightened. They had been given misinformation about they were going to be kicked out of the university. And before I got to them, there was some scare tactics involved. It bothered me a great deal to be talking to somebody that's a PhD. And here we are, we call this person in the restroom, and somebody's told us they're gay. And, I got across the desk from me. I don't like this man's future or this woman's future. For this, not working. But you do what you got to do.
This is serious. You can imagine what it would mean to your mother and father. We would have to go in as police officers and tell them that your son or your daughter is a homosexual.
I was at the University of Florida from 1955 to 1959. Students felt that it was inappropriate and abusive behavior, and it was degrading the value of their own degrees and diplomas. It degraded the national standing of universities in Florida and had a lingering effect, which was felt several decades after the Johns Committee went out of business.
With the case of USF, the American Association of University Professors, the American Association of University Women, the national media got involved in telling people this is what's going on. And that was a little turning point, because I think people then were starting to think, well, the Johns Committee overreached by that point.
The purple pamphlet is a report by the Johns Committee. Its official name is Homosexuality and Citizenship in Florida. It was an explanation of homosexuality, and it's supposed to be directed towards parents and teachers, and how we have to fight this horrible menace, that sort of thing, the threat of homosexuality and all that.
But when it came out, of course, it had the opposite effect. People saw it as a state. And the fact that it was paid for by taxpayers' money, it was considered to be outrageous. In fact, in Dane County, the state's attorney declared it to receive piece of material and it couldn't be shown in public or circulated.
That, of course, was a very big mistake they made as well. It was published about a year and a half before they were disbanded, which is like early 1964. Johns himself resigned from the committee.
I remember Anita Bryant. She was the anti-gay campaign in Dade County, and she was the spokesperson at the time for the Florida Citrus Commission.
She was concerned that children, would see as role models gay males, and she felt that was a very threatening kind of situation. Gay organizations, gay newspapers, gay media across the country basically began to focus on her as sort of the embodiment of all the hateful homophobia that they saw in American society.
And I remember I was so upset about that. I called the Florida Citrus Commission and spoke to Art Darling, his name was. He was the PR guy at the Florida Citrus Commission. And I told him, I said, Art, regardless of what your views are on gay rights, the fact that Anita Bryant is now so closely associated with this anti-gay movement diminishes her effectiveness as a spokesperson for the Florida Citrus Commission, and therefore she should be fired from that position.
Thank you all so much for the card and the gifts, Friday me with Pastor Appreciation. It feels good to be appreciated, so I thank you so much for that. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Chris was in the choir and I just knew of her. We'd known each other for years before we got together. Funny thing is, she asked me out several times before I said yes. When Canada approved gay marriage, we happened to be scheduled to go to a conference. So we were married in British Columbia, legally. So we have a very legal marriage certificate from Canada, which is not recognized. Legal up to a point. Knowing Ruth now, I just can't imagine someone bullying her like that. Of course, I didn't know her when she was 19 years old, and I can imagine, I guess when I was 19, I didn't know my rights so well either, but no child should be bullied, whether it's by another child or by the teachers or the administration. And I still blame FSU for it, because I believe they knew what was happening. We see discrimination all the time and witch hunts all the time for different reasons. So the more we let it happen, the more it's going to continue to happen for one reason or the other. I still love FSU. I don't blame the school. I blame the state of Florida that happened. I know they knew what they were doing, and they need to apologize to us. To pay us all back, here's what you need to do. You need to pass gay marriage reform. That'd be it. We'd be done. I believe God has a plan, and you get through it no matter what. So the fact that I didn't get to be a band director and do that path, for me, I ultimately ended up in the exact career that I should have had, which I would not have done, quite honestly, at least for a longer period of time, had I been able to go to the school and get my degree.
The trend line in America is towards inclusion, not exclusion. Talents of all around people, whatever their backgrounds, their history, their orientation might be, are important assets for the nation today and in the future.
If you know your history, then you're not alone. You're part of something bigger. You really aren't alone. And you will also find out that people have gone through this before, and they've gone through much worse, and they've survived. You need to find about your people and your history, because it'll make you feel a lot better about yourself, and you have no reason to not feel proud.
So, really, I almost didn't find the investor, so I knew I was no problem.
Here we are 50 years later. And you look back on all the changes that have occurred, and it's really stunning to think how things have changed in the country and in Florida.
In retrospect, thinking back, did you ever think that this day would come like this?
No, it was scary, and there were a lot of people that were faculty members and students and staff. At that time, it was a horrible time in the history of the University of Florida. And we're still trying to live it down, yes, in some ways.
Well, yeah, it's shameful, if you will. But a lot of progress was made out of it.
Yeah, I survived. Not only got called in by the Johns Committee, but ended up being a faculty member at the University of Florida for 42 years.
In spite of
In spite of it all. So,
Get your heart out, Charlie.
yeah.
I want to thank all of you for traveling from far and wide to be present at this magical place to affirm and celebrate this bonding of love between Chris and David. Marriage is a commitment to life, to the best that two people can find and bring out in each other. It offers opportunities for sharing and growth that no other relationship can equal.
And now, for as much as David and Chris have declared their solemn intention before these witnesses, have exchanged rings as your mutual pledge to one another, by the authority vested in me by the Universal Fellowship of Metropolitan Community Churches and the state of Florida, I am pleased to pronounce you married. You may get it.
Okay, so as we take a moment to collect our thoughts about this film, let me introduce the co-directors. First is Dr. Lisa Mills. Dr. Mills is a professor of film here at UCF. Before entering the academy in 1999, she was a broadcast journalist for 25 years at several stations in the Southeast. Dr. Mills has directed or co-directed 4 feature-length documentaries and 12 shorts. Her films have won national awards and screened in film festivals all over the world. The film we just watched, The Committee, was made in the 2011-2012 Honors Documentary Workshop that Dr. Mills co-taught with Dr. Robert Cassanello. It is in the national distribution with the American Public Television Exchange. This year, Dr. Mills earned the prestigious UCF Luminary Award, which recognizes faculty members across all disciplines for academic leadership in their fields and for conducting work that has significant impact on the world. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Mills. Our next guest is Dr. Robert Cassanello. Dr. Cassanello is an associate professor of history here at UCF. He is a social historian interested in digital public history. His book, To Render Invisible, Jim Crow and Public Life in New South Jacksonville, won the 2014 Harry Moore Award by the Florida Historical Society. Dr. Cassanello's many public history projects have involved collaboration with more than 25 museums, archives, and historical societies across the state of Florida, including the University of Florida's Natural History Museum, Florida Department of State Division of Historical Resources, Orange County Regional History Center, and Jones High School Museum, and the Florida Historical Society. Dr. Cassanello is also the president of the UCF chapter of the United Faculty of Florida, the union that represents more than 25,000 faculty members at Florida's 12 public universities. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Cassanello. So I'm going to turn the Zoom chat back on. Zoom guests, please post questions for our co-directors in the chat. I'll ask that you post questions only and reserve other forms of communication for offline. I think it'll be best to go back and forth between Zoom and in-person questions. At 1 o'clock, we'll have an official wrap up and I'll have the information for people attending for course credit. So who has a first question for our panelists? Yes.
Dr. Cassanello, he is a historian, and the way we kind of work things is he locates stories, and then I work with the students as well to make the production of the film. So Dr. Cassanello.
Thank you. This story was something I had known about since I was a graduate student in the early 90s. The Johns Committee documents were first made publicly available, I want to say in 1993. And so it was a big story. This is actually our second film together. And when we were in pre-production on this film, the way that these projects work is I usually pitch 3 ideas to Dr. Mills, and I said, you can pick of the 3 ideas, which we do, she could have more say than to say, all right, we'll do whatever you want to do. So I pitched 3 ideas. And we agreed that the Johns Committee was probably the best idea to pursue, because by that point in time, which was, I think, 2010, 2011, around there, articles and books had been published, so there were historians we can interview. There were still people alive who went before the Johns Committee, as you saw. So we felt that there were a lot of raw materials to make a good story. And it also was a story we wanted to tell, because at the time when we chose the story was when many states and the George W. Bush administration were prohibiting marriage equality in the country. The people in this state at the time had voted against marriage equality. And so it was the backdrop of that, pessimism about equal rights for everyone. And we decided that this was the story we wanted to tell at that moment. And we just happened to hit on the right story, the right moment, and the rest of the contemporary and the history kind of matched really well and unfolded together in a way that you only really kind of can hope.
Yeah, I'll just add to that one of the things we tried to agree on is making films about a moment in history that can teach us things, remind us of things in the moment now. So we feel that it's interesting how relevant this film has become again in 2021. So that's what we're doing.
And what would you say, what would you say is the relevance of the film in 2021? What specifically do you mean?
Well, I think it's important that all of us understand that in our government system, the way that things work is through voting and electing people that represent our beliefs, that represent justice, that represent ideas that we strongly believe in. And when elections happen, as we've seen, policies can be turned around. So I don't think that the fight for injustice in this country ever, the fight for justice in this country ever ends. Right now, we have, in Washington, work being done to pass a national law to protect voting. And it's important, I think, for all generations to understand that your vote is so important. It really counts. If you don't participate in elections and that process, then some things that you believe in, some policies that protect your values can be eliminated, they could be discontinued. And while we have marriage equality in Florida at the moment, that could change. It could change again if we aren't careful and don't recognize how important it is to continue to vote in a way that will represent our own personal values.
Yes.
What was the biggest challenge you faced with creating the film?
Question is, what was the biggest challenge that we faced?
Probably a different answer.
Yeah, I think we could both address that. I think that as a filmmaker, you're always looking at creative ways to visualize a story, particularly when it's a historical story. You may not always have visuals to represent what happened in the past. So one of the challenges we had in making the film, of course, was finding people who were willing to speak on camera about what had happened. Chuck and Reverend Ruth were very generous with their time. They were willing to be interviewed numerous times by our honor students in the class. But that took a lot of courage on their part. We spoke to other John's Committee victims, if you will, who remained so traumatized decades later that they simply didn't feel comfortable speaking in front of the camera. So particularly with documentary and history documentary, one of the major challenges is finding the right people who can bring the story to life, that can engage the viewer and can help the viewer identify with the themes of the film. And so we were just really fortunate to be able to connect with Chuck Wood and Reverend Ruth.
Something I agree with Dr. Mills on that answer. That probably was the most serious challenge that we had in the film. The other challenge that's kind of internal to me was sort of marrying, because there's two sort of heads of production, if you will, Dr. Mills and myself. And I'm a historian. Dr. Mills is a filmmaker, and so my loyalty is to the facts and accuracy, and her loyalty is to story. And sometimes those don't overlap, And so I think this was our second film we made together with students. And I think this was the first real challenge we had to negotiate. At what point do we give in on the facts to create the story, and at what point do we take a little bit away from the story to get into the facts, right? And that was a struggle that Dr. Mills and I had throughout this film and subsequent films as well. I don't think that ever goes away, because we both come at this with very different sensibilities. Dr. Mills is trying to tell a story. I'm trying to get historical accuracy and interpretation across as faithfully to those ideals as I can. And I can tell you that on my end, that does not make for good storytelling, right? So, we had to kind of figure out a way, well, how do we achieve a good, blending of both? And I think that was a real challenge.
We have a question from Aiden from Zoom. What work must still be done to improve LGBTQ+ rights in universities?
In universities, well, I want to go back to what I mentioned, and that is, I hope you all realize the importance of your vote. It's really critical that you participate in our democracy by voting in every election and carefully understanding the positions of the different candidates, who they represent, the ideals that they represent, and voting for those who have ideals with which you agree. So that would be number one that I would put. Secondly, I think that administrators, while they often don't listen to faculty, they definitely listen to students. You would be surprised. And so it's very important that you find ways to express your voice, not just in the classroom, but in participating in your own student government and in student organizations. Those are really important. It's important while you're here, you have a unique opportunity to make a difference by getting involved. And I know we're all busy, and just like you, I had a part-time job while I was in college, but it is important to understand that you can make a difference by participating in events and participating with organizations that can get the attention of administration and hopefully create policies that represent your beliefs. Dr. Cassanello?
Yeah, just quickly, I agree with everything that Emil said, but just to add to it, I think there's still a lot of work to be done, even though we have seen some changes in the L and G part of LGBTQ+. I think we have to kind of have solidarity with the T part of the LGBTQ+ community. And we see this especially so on the state legislative level, where we're still seeing these ridiculous bathroom laws being passed and school systems, primarily the K-12 school systems, that are making it really difficult for students who are transgender or transitioning or some way, shape, or form. There's still in sports, yeah, and to go back to what Dr. Mills started with in this question, we had a state legislator, Anthony Sabatini from Lake County, who was introducing some anti-trans legislation in the Florida legislature that will be considered in the spring legislative session. So, she's right in saying that it's your role as a citizen of this state, of this community, of this campus, to take an interest in things that are important to you. We hope, based on if you like this film and it spoke to you, you're going to kind of carry that as a means to make sure that we continue to have good outcomes for everyone.
So back then and now, we kind of see a pattern of now it's the transgender people not accepting that. So we're seeing like a pattern of just no acceptance. And my question is, if it's not affecting these people and it's not affecting the college, why do they care so much to affect other people's lives?
Sure. Okay. So the question is, I'm going to kind of boil it down, I think. If I get it wrong, just wave your hand and listen again. But I think your question is, why do politicians and policymakers take an interest in targeting people who are sort of on the margins or vulnerable? Like, what's in it for them to make? And it doesn't affect them. Right, it doesn't affect them, and why? What interest do they have in making people feel horrible about themselves and others, right? That's what we call demagoguery. I just got to put it out there plain and simple. And this is what this film is about. These lawmakers in the 1950s and 60s, Charlie Jones, what they did, you have to remember from the beginning of the film, they were initially interested in the civil rights movement. And the problem for them is the civil rights movement was gaining momentum, and the civil rights movement had lawyers. right? So the Senate Legislative Committee couldn't, in their minds, effectively intimidate them, right? So they had to search for a scapegoat, search for a population they could intimidate. And what they then targeted after the civil rights movement in Florida were gay, lesbian teachers, students, and staff at public schools and public universities and colleges. And so what's in it for them, which is your question, what's in it for them, is it gives, it's very easy for a politician to create what we call the other. And to say, see, you're having these problems because of this group here, because of that group there. And they're making your life miserable. And you even hear this, they're taking rights away from you. This was the rhetoric of the Johns Committee in the 50s and 60s. And you heard this rhetoric in your lifetime, right? It's never went away, right? And so what it represents are efforts on the part of politicians who are more interested in demagoguery, right, than policy solutions, than trying to make, the country, the state, the community work for everybody. And so that's what's in it for them. What's in it for them is power. Look at, Charlie John was able to create this committee. He was able to get funding. He was able to use law enforcement. He was able to get the presidents of the universities, the president of the University of Florida, the president of Florida State University, the president of FAMU, the president of the University of South Florida. Those are all public universities. Get them all to come to the table and say, yes, we'll tell you who the gay, lesbian students and professors are, so you can bring them into your, your committee or your investigative offices and interrogate them, right? They were able to get everyone to kind of sign on board with that because they created this demon other that didn't exist, didn't merit it, obviously. And again, you don't have to look very far in the past to see that this is, a way that politicians can continue to do this. And I'll bring up Anthony Sabatini again, who's a representative in Tallahassee from Lake County, who I mentioned about the trans bill earlier. He recently gave an interview saying that professors like Dr. Mills and myself are indoctrinating students. He said this on television, right, on the local channel 13 News. He said, why is H. Bill 233 important? And he said, in no uncertain terms, because college professors are Marxists and they're trying to indoctrinate students. So Anthony Sabatini, who was elected to office, right, is making Dr. Mills an idea, making us, the solution to other people's problems, and say, well, we just got to target these people. And if you target these people, your life is going to improve. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people that is a seductive message to, and I would caution everyone in here to look beyond that. Creating the other only leads to the story that you witness up there on the planet.
Do you see future work with other?
That would be a beautiful future if we could all come together and unify and love each other and accept each other. But because there will always be people like Sabatini who crave power, unfortunately, I don't ever see a future like that. There will always be people, if you analyze, I'm not a film and TV, right? So analyze any episode of Star Trek. I guess I'm dating myself. But, all of those episodes are about power. Just about every one of them is about power. It's a highly political series. And I guess one of the other things that I would like to say along those lines is that we know you're all, have been in a communications class. So let's talk about communication and media research. We know that right now, citizens are much more likely to pay attention to national news than local or state news. We know that for a fact through research. And what's really dangerous about that is that our citizenry on the local and state level aren't well informed about these laws and policies that are being passed, like the ones that Charlie Johns got passed. And so one of the things I hope that you'll walk out of this film screening thinking about is becoming more informed about what our state lawmakers are doing in Tallahassee, what our local school boards are doing. I just heard a story last night on the local news about a school board member somewhere in Texas that is pushing a regulation for her school district where if you teach about the Holocaust, you must teach also about the converse of the Holocaust, the contrasting view. What is the contrasting view of the Holocaust? It's unbelievable. We are seeing more and more local school boards being politicized and becoming battlegrounds over these sorts of issues because education is a hot political football for people who want power. One of the things they want to do with education is keep the status quo. They want everybody to just think alike and not ask questions and not do any kind of critical thinking. Just keep everything the same. And so Dr. Cassanello and I have made 4 documentaries together, and all 4 of them get at the intersection of politics with education. One of the most important things you can pay attention to are what your local school boards are doing and what your local law, what your state lawmakers are doing. And when it comes to education policy. I hope that it would be nice if we could say that all politicians become elected because they want to do what's best for their citizenry, you know, what's best for everyone. But really, as we're seeing now, the election cycle, another part of communication research, is we're seeing now the election cycle is year-round. They're always running for office. They're always raising funds to pay for their campaigns. It never ends anymore. We're the only nation in the world that is in that situation. So it's up to the next generations to try to bring everything back in balance and make sure that public policy for health and education is to help people learn and to help people be healthy, not to keep whoever's in power in power.
And, just quickly, how many of you are students at UCF? That was a joke. But all of you are students and all of you are citizens of the UCF community. So, you know, in support of what Dr. Mills just said, you have a role here in your own community. You have a student government association. You have access to sit into board of trustees meetings. You can ask questions about the policies that impact you personally on this campus and your classmates, and you should take a role in that. You know, there are venues for you to voice your opinion and be part of the public sphere that is the politics of the university.
Know that your parents put a lot of emphasis on your degree and then what kind of job are you going to get, right? We know you're under that kind of pressure. But a university degree is not a vocational degree. The originating traditional purpose of a university is to also create good, well-informed citizens, responsible citizens that can help our democracy move forward. So while you're here learning whatever it is you're going to do as your career, that's great. But while you're here, you're going to have a lot of opportunities that you'll never have again to hear different kinds of speakers, to get involved in different kinds of organizations. And I just would encourage you to take advantage of those opportunities because it's a unique time in your life when you'll be able to get involved with all of this. Once you get out in the working world, it becomes much more difficult.
We have a question from Andrew on the Zoom. Was there any point during your research or when you were making the film when an individual being interviewed said something that initially you hadn't thought about and that kind of changed your perspective?
Oh, there's, I mean, probably too many to mention now, minutes that are here. But for this film specifically, I think, you know, one of the things that, that we got out of the interviews, and this I think was with both interviews with Reverend Ruth and with Chuck. I don't think we ever, you know, we were so interested in getting the story of the Johns Committee years, we weren't thinking about after, but they just started talking about their lives after, right? And you see this in the film because we actually use this material. This is something that we learned and maybe didn't realize at the beginning of the film, was that they all had this, or they both of them had this journey, right? Where, you know, I know Chuck says, or Reverend Ruth said she was never in the closet, but based on her description of her life at FSU and before, she certainly was. Or at least that's what she described. And of course, Chuck was not open either. But as a result of the Johns Committee experience, as a result of, you know, feeling marginalized in the 60s, you know, they both eventually stood up and said, this is who I am publicly, and lived that public life. You know, and, you know, Chuck mentioned this specifically with the Anita Bryant thing, where he says, I picked up the phone and I called Art Darling and I said, you've got to stop this because, you know, she's no longer effective and this and that. You know, and of course, that wasn't something he was going to do during the Johns Committee years as a student at UF, I think later. And I think that's something that the interviewees told us that we weren't sort of prepared for because, we, like I said, we weren't searching for their post-Johns Committee stories specifically in that way. And they kind of wrapped it up for us in that way. And Reverend Ruth, of course, herself tells a similar story, you know. The idea of her no longer wanting to be a band director, but then becoming a pastor in a church that serves the LGBTQ plus community.
Just quickly, I'll tell you one thing that I found extremely disturbing that I was unaware of, that I discovered in the film, was that the Tallahassee Police Department was paying FSU students $10 for each time the student turned in someone that they thought was gay. And I couldn't believe it when I saw that report. And it really made me think about how university students can be used. You know, how they can be manipulated by people. You know, and it was shocking to me. You know, the university police department would pay people. The Tallahassee Police Department would pay people to. But what witch hunts? I hope we never run into anything like that again. But witch hunts happen over and over and over again. The witch hunt of the other. I mean, it's something that we haven't mentioned is the other is the immigrant. You see this, it's cyclical over and over again. Politicians that want to stay in power talk about immigrants as being the other and blaming them for problems and things. We see that happen over and over and over again in this country. So yeah, that was very shocking to me to see that.
We have time for one more question.
2014 is when we finalized.
Right, okay. So I was gonna ask because you, Roman, like, you know, in Florida, gay marriage was legalized in 2015, and you had so easier, that was something that you threw in like later down the line. What was that process like reaching back out to the and all that?
Yes. So we were keeping track of what was happening with gay marriage, and something we didn't get into in the film was also gay adoption was illegal in Florida at that time. You couldn't, if you were gay, you could not foster or adopt children out of the state system, and that changed as well. But yeah, what we did was we made one version of the film for film festivals, and it got in a lot of film festivals nationally and internationally. We kept our eyes on what was happening, and then the law changed. And Reverend Ruth, we stayed in touch with her, and she let us know the wedding ceremony that you saw was the first gay wedding ceremony that she performed. She was extremely emotional back then. We went up to Jacksonville and we filmed that, and we put that on the end with the new information about the law. And also in the meantime, John Nicholson passed away. And so we put a little note in at the end of the film about his passing. And I met with his widow when we were putting the different ending on the film. And she said that she felt like he would definitely have wanted us to continue on with the film, that he was actually very remorseful at the end of his life for his involvement with the Johns Committee. So, yeah, so there were 2 iterations of the film. The first one through the film festival, then the law changed, and then we changed the film, and that's the one that's airing nationally across the United States on local public TV stations.
Yeah, so actually, there was many different endings on this film, because I think through the film festival and screens we had in the first maybe 2 years, we fiddled with the ending quite a bit, you know, because we would show the film, and based on the audience reactions and questions and responses, we might, you know, tweak things here or there based on what we got. So I know, like, there was an early ending that was very different from what you saw that we cut out during the film festival. And when we were getting ready to do the distribution for public television, was when Reverend Ruth was doing the ceremony. And we're like, well, we got to get that, because that's a great ending. That's a new ending we put out there, because we want to kind of keep up with the way things are, or else it would have been really dated to 2012, right? As opposed to 2015 when it ran originally on public television. So yeah, so we've always been kind of tweaking it based on sort of.
Thank you very much, everyone. That's all the time we have. Gotta let everybody get to their next class, but please join me in again thanking our filmmakers, Dr. Lisa Mills and Dr. Robert Cassanello. And I'll be posting the survey and the link right now for everyone, both online and in person.
And we're counting on you to make it so that we don't have to change the ending again.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. Sorry, I gotta get signed. Thank you so much.
Oh, this is coded. I was wondering why they can picture this one.
Oh, sorry. Gotta move it off of there. You can get to the survey by scanning the QR code or entering tinyurl.com/FSWFilm. And once you've completed the survey, you are free to go. And if you're in any of my classes, you don't even need, well, do complete the survey because that's satisfaction questions. All right, thank you so much, everyone.
need to wait.
Yes, was it provided additional evidence? No, that's it. Well, which one? That's fine. I'll do it. I have a pen. I do have a pen. Yep. There you go. And whose class did you attend for?
Jamie Vega.
Okay, well, yeah, if there's any issues with that, we could just let her know.
Yeah,
I saw you, we saw you yesterday at the other event too.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a good one. Thanks for coming.
Wanted to clarify on the survey.
Sure.
Since I noted that this was credit for the communication participation part. Can you see a portion that specifically mentioned the name of my professor? Is that just going to be like in general, like once I find my name will be put in search up in like,
Well, let's see what the survey, let me go to the survey. I think it did have it, but anyone that's left out, Dr. Hanlon organizes all that. Who's your professor?
Barfield.
Dr. Barfield. So we will just, any leftovers would probably circulate to everybody, but what's your name?
Brandon Hodge.
Brandon Hodge?
Yes, Hodge.
It's going to ask if it was a D or not. Okay, and I'll put Barfield. So if there are any issues, sorry, shut up.
Appreciate it, sir.
Okay, I'm Dr. Parrish. Okay, so it comes Dr. Parrish, if it comes back to it.
Okay, thank you very much, sir.
Yep. Hello. Hello? It is. Hello? No, it's me. It's me. Christine.